kind of a standalone, we'll see that he's making one of the snakes. So you can actually come and look down here and actually see and start to get an idea, okay, who's doing what, who's known for what, and then compare it to the pieces that we have on display. So he's got this snake that he's now putting away into the annealer because it's going to be used later. So that kind of collaborative piece that I was talking about is going to have 3 different elements to it. It's going to have the kind of grass and the mushrooms. It's going to have the skeleton skull with the wings, and then it's going to have these snake heads as well, these snakes kind of wrapping around. It's going to be a lot of really interesting things kind of all coming together to create one large piece. So we're going to be able to just see kind of lots of stuff happening over there. Meanwhile, I do believe that we've gotten another camera angle set up that we'll be able to start using for the other side of our hot shop. As our soft glass workers start to kind of get moving, we'll be able to see what they're working on as well. So I again kind of want to point out, you can see how we're using that kind of large clear rod of glass as the base. Like it's basically the handle for the flame worker. Being able to kind of hold it from that stability point and then turn it with that and be able to actually keep hold of it and all that. Yeah, I really appreciate your question because it's a good one. Did we like prep and fill anything more with specific glass for them to be here? And the answer is no. They come with basically everything that they're going to need, along with like, you know, the lathe that's here. So we were kind of having a little conversation about this kind of big contraption that you see kind of just hanging out unattended at the moment. Nobody's kind of playing with it. It'll be used shortly, but it's a way that we can actually kind of keep constant rotation on the glass without having to physically use our hands. And it allows for a lot of really intricate and really crazy pieces to be made one of which being like this kind of goblet down here that you might see. But any materials that they're using, they have brought, because here at the museum, we don't use the hard glass. So they bring it themselves because we don't have any, you know, like we just don't ever really use it. We do have a few like after hours programs that every once in a while will use the hard glass. But typically here in the museum, we're pretty traditionally using that soft glass. So they have to come prepared with whatever they may need for the day, along with any extra tools or like their annealers, stuff like that, to be able to kind of store their pieces. And it's similar concept as I was describing earlier with the garage. So some of you were probably in here while I was talking about this kind of big silver box. The garage allows us to kind of store things that we're going to use later. So we have some pieces of glass in there that we have planned to use later, that we've prepped ahead of time. And the flame workers kind of have a similar thing. They have these annealers, so you can see quite a few of them kind of in the back there, and then one kind of in the front, this small one. And this allows them to actually store their pieces at a kind of stable temperature for them to kind of pull them in and out. And we do the same thing with our glass, just on a larger scale. So you can see how there's a lot of similarities, but really one of the biggest differences is the scale to which it's done, right? Flame working is usually on a smaller scale with the tabletop torch, versus glass blowing, where to heat our glass we have to use these big round chambers called the glory hole. The other thing that I want to kind of compare and contrast as we're getting this close-up look, on the top of the torch, you'll notice that there's this kind of flat surface that he's using to roll it and kind of shape it. This is what we call the Marva. We have the same thing in glass blowing. Ours are just Marva tables. So this kind of really big table that you see with the metal top, that's our Marva table. We use that in glass to be able to do the same thing, kind of roll out our glass and shape it. And flame workers have a very similar concept. It's just on a much smaller scale and kind of, you know, all handheld right there for them to be able to use. Another thing I would love to just point out is I kind of talked about coloring a little bit earlier. In the case of glass blowing, we kind of have these 3 different ways that we can color something. And on this Marva table that I was talking about just a moment ago, you'll see these trays. And on those trays, we have some sort of, you know, powder glass. And one that's not quite as fine is a little bit chunkier. So these are some of the colors that we're going to be using, that we're going to roll our glass into, just so that you know, and you can kind of then see it once we get to that point of adding the color onto our glass. How exciting. It looks like the lathe is about to be used. So you'll notice that really we aren't having to use, like you had mentioned, any sort of metal or wood. It's a glass rod that's just getting put right into there. And then attached to that glass rod is whatever he's going to be working on. And then kind of in the center there, we have the torch that'll get lit. And it can actually, the torch can actually kind of pivot back and forth. So he can have full control over where that heat is kind of focused and targeted. But you can see how that lathe is just going to continuously rotate at one, you know, consistent speed. So it just makes, you know, working on these like really large pieces much easier. because there's only so much control that you can have in your hand before, you know, a piece starts to get too big and there's too much risk. So we can see how that torch has quite a lot of range of motion. It can kind of move back and forth, you know, forwards and back, and then also side to side.